Support for this video comes from Manscaped, our go-to for men's grooming tools. The world is opening, and the Performance Package 4.0 from Manscaped is here to help you get ready. This 4th generation package includes the brand new Lawnmower 4.0 trimmer, which features a cutting-edge ceramic blade to reduce accidents thanks to its advanced skin-safe technology. The Lawnmower 4.0 also has a 7,000 RPM motor, a travel lock, and a 4000K LED spotlight for a more precise shave. Did I mention it's also waterproof? The package also includes the Weed Whacker ear and nose hair trimmer with its motor-powered 360-degree rotary dual blade system, and we can't forget their liquid formulations, the Crop Preserver deodorant and Crop Reviver toner. You'll also get 2 free gifts, the Performance Boxer Briefs and the Shed Travel Bag. Join the 2 million men worldwide who trust Manscaped by going to manscaped.com/Chael for 20% off plus free shipping. That's 20% off plus free shipping at manscaped.com/Chael. Guys, what do you do if you had to give an answer right now? What do you do with Conor McGregor? Now, hold that thought. I want to get your answer, but let's back up. Ben Askren was talking. And Ben Askren weighed in on Nate Diaz. And Ben was more talking about Nate versus Jake Paul, but then he threw himself in there. Said, well, you want to say that I suck at boxing and I think you suck at wrestling. How about I just come and fight Nate? Now, that match isn't going to happen for a number of reasons, but it's important that you understand what those reasons are. And even though Ben was being a little bit tongue-in-cheek on this, it was still an interesting, because that would be fun. I would be very interested in Askren versus Diaz in the unified rules, for sure. I also know I'll never get what I want because it doesn't satisfy what the promoter has to have. A promoter that's playing checkers could go make that fight, no problem. But a promoter who's playing chess, and the promoter of the UFC is always playing chess, needs to know, when this match is done, what do I have tomorrow? One guy's going to get shined up, so I got a nice trinket that I can place on a card at a later date. Who's it going to be? And that's where the problem would come. If Ben is talking about coming back on a one-off, you don't have this. And if Nate is openly talking about one and I'm out of here, you don't have this. So we're not going to get to see that fight. But it does come back to what do you do with Conor? The reason I say that, I know that Conor, who's a master of marketing, if anybody can pull off Conor versus Poirier, as Poirier is the champion, if anyone can pull that off, it's Conor, and I'm not sure he can. I'm not sure anybody wants to see Conor fight Poirier except for Conor and possibly Poirier, in all fairness. Now, there's plenty of fights that you don't have that, and you can tweak it, and you can change it, and you got to do a whole bunch of hard work. So let's just say that everything goes well and you do have that. Can you sell the idea to the public that Conor qualifies to fight for a world championship, which is exactly what Dustin Poirier might be? Do you see where it becomes a little bit of a problem? Now, I also don't believe that Conor McGregor, and it's not that he doesn't deserve, by the way, I don't like to use that word deserve. Sometimes it'll slip out of my mouth and it is accurate, but I don't like to do it, and I'm not doing it now. It's not about what Conor McGregor deserves. It's also about what Conor McGregor have to do. If Conor McGregor has this big beef with Dustin Poirier and we got to settle the wife in the DMs comment, we just have to do it. Life can't move on unless we do. Does Conor have to do that first when he comes back? It's a very tough spot that Conor's in. Right? He's not training the way that he wants to. I've seen Conor on the row machine, all sweaty, working his ass off. That's still not the way that he wants to train. He's going to be throwing punches and kicks with another opponent at a pretty high pace to sharpen himself up. It's one of the reasons that he was at a deficit in his second fight with Poirier, which also represented largely his first fight back, right? I think if we as a community did anything wrong in 2020, it was having Conor fight Cowboy and then never fighting again. I think if any of us are to be fair about a mistake that we did in 2020, if we were to be fair and honest, we say that. We had a ready, willing, and able Conor McGregor, and we put him on ice. It was a mistake. And Conor's the one that had to suffer the price of our mistake by just being a little bit unready, just being a little bit unsharp, being a little bit out of sync with his timing in that fight with Poirier. Okay. But if you hold that thought and it's just got to be Conor and Poirier, does it have to be next? It would seem as though there's beautiful things that you can do with Conor. Dana's even spoke about this over time, not recently, but over time. and that is Conor versus Diaz Part 3. And Dana very openly said, I'm in no rush to do that match because I will always have that match. There's never a time or a change in the placement or the rankings where I can't throw the trilogy of Conor and Diaz on the table and do great business. Dana was very candid about this. But doesn't it seem like that time is now? Because if we can't get Diaz versus Askren, because when it's all done, one guy doesn't get elevated, right? One guy's coming back and the other guy's looking to go somewhere else, just if we take them at their own word. If that's the reason that we can't have something that we would really like to have, isn't that problem solved with Conor versus Diaz Part 3? And as accurate as Dana's statement was that I will always have that to play, well, Dana didn't have the same information then that he does now, which is Nate would like to go somewhere and do something else. So now that Dana is armed with that information, it would seem as though the first part of the statement is still true, which is I've got this beautiful ace up my sleeve that I can throw on the table at any time. Isn't that time now? And by the way, why should Conor McGregor have to step in there against Dustin Poirier? If Dustin Poirier is the champion of the world, particularly, which he's favored, at least by the locker room, Michael Chandler, Justin Gaethje specifically come to mind that have said he's going to win. Let's just say that they're right. Why should Conor have to go fight the best guy in the world just because he's got a beef with him? I mean, why shouldn't he get one back? And getting one back, you can be a victim of your own success. I argue for you that Ronda Rousey, the only reason that she left the sport when she did is she became a victim of her own success. She was paid so much and so much was expected of her that you had to put her as a main event or you couldn't justify the salary. She didn't have the skills to be a main event anymore, but she was still a top 10 in the world. And no fighter would leave if they were still in the top 10. They would stick around. They would want to do it. And I think that Ronda, because of how good and how popular she was, largely had her career cut short, which we can all agree isn't the way it's supposed to be. So I don't know that we need to put these things on Conor. I feel like we did that in 2020. It's going to be Conor and Khabib, and it's going to be part 2, and millions of people are going to watch, and all these. Oh, okay, great, but now we have a victim, which is Conor. I don't know that Conor should be put in that spot. So when I ask you, what would you do next with Conor, you've got to understand, there's very few times within the UFC. It comes about once every 10 years where we get to have fun. Everything else has to be of interest. Everything else has to be of importance. Every 10 years, we can get James Toney in there. Every 10 years, we can get CM Punk in there. We can do some stuff that we want to do because it's fun. For no other damn reason. Matt Serra versus, Matt Hughes versus Ricardo Almeida. When Dana White was building that fight, it had no level of where does anybody go from here. Dana White came to a press conference and he told everybody the truth, which is sometimes you have two guys that just want to fight each other. There was nothing else he said about that fight. And you know what? That answer works. That was 20 years ago. I remember when Dana said that because it was so simple. And it was just right in your face. Here's what's happening. Izzy Adesanya tested that when he took on Yoel Romero. Said, I don't care if this isn't the top contender. I'm the champion. I don't want punished for my own success, and that's the guy I want to fight. Okay, then you're going to fight him. We'll put everything else on hold, and you two can go do that. It made a level of sense, and I'm only submitting for you. If you want to see Conor and Dustin, first off, you're in the minority. That is not a fight people want to see. Now, when the night comes, I understand it's going to do fantastic business. If we get in that point, they're going to be a ton of fun. But you can start inserting characters. If you have Conor on one side of the octagon, you got a good night of business. We don't want to see the port. We just don't. We got our answer. Then we got it again. And should Conor have to do that? Some of you would look at like, Conor doesn't deserve to walk into a world title fight. Set that aside. Whatever childish behavior you have about who deserves to fight for a world title or whatever code that you think that we have to follow, set that aside. Isn't he being punished? Wouldn't that be a very hard thing for anybody to do, to come off the injury reserves and go right against the best guy on the planet? It's a lot to ask. I submit for you it's too much to ask. So if we are not going to ask it and we're going to ask something else, you still have to satisfy the question of what do you do with Conor McGregor, who's going to be back a lot quicker than you guys think. Conor McGregor's going to have a fight announced in the first quarter of next year, for sure. He will be in there by summer and most likely. So that's coming quick. Nate Diaz wants to move on. He wants something else to do. He thinks he's being slowed down. That's pretty quick. You can get this turnaround. You can get it in 6 months. You can satisfy everybody. You can make a mega match. And we can have a little bit of fun, which is one thing we don't get to do in this sport that's always so serious. Do you guys disagree? Do you have a different idea? I would love to hear it.